What up, y'all? I'm recording this little intro preface after I recorded the actual episode itself. I need to say that I feel very insecure about the social media post picture that I put up to kind of advertise this podcast episode. I feel it's very like kind of narcissistic, look at me, kind of post, but it's intentional in multiple ways. The first of which is that, like, I think it draws attention to the episode, which, I do want people to look at, as many people as possible to listen to the episode. But secondly, I think it's also very emblematic of where my life is right now. Like, that picture is how I look every single day. Sweaty, smelly, walking around shirtless in my underwear, or like in a pair of shorts without any underwear, and also in this little shack guest house that I live in the backyard. And then, more than anything, that's how I feel. That look on my face, just screaming at the top of my lungs. That's how I feel right now. As I say in this episode, the past several weeks and few months, there's been, some screaming at the top of my lungs. I guess it could be more accurate if I had tears rolling down my face. Scream crying at the top of my lungs. I feel, like I'm losing my mind right now. And so I wanted to make a picture where I wanted to take a picture that's the most accurate reflection of where my life is right now. And that's where my life is right now. Shirtless, smelly, scream crying, feeling trapped in a box. So, I know it seems, at least I feel insecure about it being like, narcissistic, look at me, but it's, I also do feel it's an accurate reflection of where my life is right now, which you'll hear much more about in greater detail. Prepare yourselves right now in this episode. So it's good to be back, guys, and thank you so much for listening. Here's the episode itself. What up, y'all? This is Alex Clark-Youngblood. Today is August 15th, 2021, and we're back. The podcast is back. Today's episode is going to be a brief one. I just want to offer an explanation for where the podcast has been, and also just a brief description of where my life has been over the past, I believe it's 8-ish months since I posted the last episode. Let me establish first and foremost, this is not a cry for help. This is not a public cry for help. The past 8 months, I'll get into detail here in a second. The past 8 months has gotten increasingly dark psychologically, but my closest family and friends and at least one mental health professional is aware of that. And so this is not a cry for help. It's going to sound bad. It's going to sound dark, but I'm going to be fine. I'm going to emerge from this hole of despair that I will describe here in a minute. I'm going to emerge. I'm confident I'm going to emerge stronger. Where I stand right now, it's hard to even believe that when I say it. Well, actually, it's not. I do believe that. I'm in a very dark place at the moment, but I'm thoroughly confident that I'm going to emerge a happy and healthy individual and stronger than ever. So the last episode I posted was in November of 2020, and ironically enough, it was with a friend of mine named Stephen Morgan, who is a mental health professional, a guy who has struggled with mental health issues throughout his life and has attempted to combat them in alternative means and has dedicated his professional life to helping others combat mental health issues by alternative means. It was not my plan to interview him and then disappear and fall into my own downward psychological spiral, but in fact, that's exactly what has happened. So let me offer just a brief description of my psychological history, my mental health history, and then get us up to this point just to provide some context to what exactly is going on. I've gone over this in other episodes, but let's just have it condensed here as a standalone little descriptor. Throughout my entire childhood, I experienced not throughout my entire childhood, starting in 5th grade, I would get strep throat regularly throughout childhood. And in 5th grade, I got a very bad case of strep throat. So bad, in fact, that the tonsils were so infected that they enlarged so much with infection that they actually started ripping off the side of my throat. They're actually like performing their own sort of tonsillectomy. And in fact, the doctors then had to go in and remove the tonsils. They're already halfway removed, but they went in and removed them. And I was hospitalized for a little while, prior to the tonsillectomy, received large doses of antibiotics to combat the strep. And shortly thereafter, right around second semester of 5th grade, out of nowhere, I started experiencing severe OCD symptoms. Very classic shit you may have read in textbooks or seen in movies, or hopefully not experienced yourself, washing your hands 200 times a day, performing different rituals. For me, it was things like I would have to go through a whole routine where I'd lay out my clothes and have to dress and redress myself every morning, turning the stove off and off hundreds of times. And I'm talking about I would be up all night long, opening and closing the front door, unlocking and locking car doors. And at the time, throughout my childhood, I was doing these things because my brain was telling me if I didn't do these things, there would be some sort of catastrophic consequence. The initial consequences when I was in 5th grade was if I didn't, walk home and step on certain sticks or certain cracks in the sidewalks when I walked home from school, then my mom would die in a car accident on the way home. Or the hand washing thing. If I didn't wash my hands, whatever the number of the day or week was, 87, 122, 451 times a day, then my mom would die in a car accident on the ride home. As I got to be a more social person and started hanging out with the girls and forming a better social network, if I didn't, tie my soccer cleats in a certain way and take them on and off, or swallow saliva while looking at a white spot on my soccer cleats 72 times, then, girls wouldn't like me anymore, or people wouldn't think I was funny anymore. And this shit went on through 5th grade all the way up until college. It wasn't until my sophomore year going into my freshman year of college, I didn't get in even to the state school, University of Georgia, in the state where I lived. And in large part, that was because I couldn't complete the SAT, because on the SAT, I couldn't complete the reading passages, or because I would have to go through certain ritual, just not such a reading passage, any math, reading, writing, whatever. I would have to go through a ritual on, every section of the test. And this wasn't just the SAT. On every academic assignment I ever completed, I had to go through some sort of ritual. I've said this on other podcasts, but I didn't read a book from 6th grade through college, through high school. Middle school and high school, I didn't read a single book because I couldn't get beyond the table of contents, because it would take me, I'd have to do a 4-hour ritual just on the table of contents, rereading, the chapter heading or whatever over and over again for hours and hours at a time. So it was impossible to read a book. When I didn't get into the state school that I'd always expected to get into, I told myself the summer before college that, dude, this shit has to stop. This is now having major negative consequences on your life. And so the summer before I went off to school, the summer of 2006, I dedicated that entire summer to 2 things: working at a deli near my house. Well, 3 things. Also hanging out with my high school buddies who were all going off to various colleges. And then putting myself through my own, what at the time I didn't know what it was, but it was basically cognitive behavioral therapy boot camp, where I would, all of these pitfalls, OCD pitfalls, I would practice getting out of them, practice these things over and over, exposing myself to all of these things that initiated these compulsions. And it actually worked fairly well. By the time I went off to the University of South Carolina my freshman year, I was able to read. I started reading the assigned chapters. I started reading entire books for English class. I was, all of a sudden I had the functioning reading skills of a 6th grader. And, my freshman year of college, compared to the previous, decade of my academic experience, was a breeze. I got straight A's in college. I was performing relatively normal. It was a slog though. I had no social life. It took me tons of time and energy to complete these assignments, especially the reading, but I was able to do it. But the compulsion was still there. There was this OCD devil in my mind, constantly telling me to engage in these compulsions, constantly telling me to reread, the sentence, constantly telling me to erase what I had written and write it over and over again. And I just ignored. I transferred to the University of Georgia my sophomore year, and everything came rushing back. I'm thinking maybe in part that was because I started drinking alcohol and partying regularly at UGA. I don't know. But they started coming back, and all of a sudden I couldn't read again. I couldn't complete academic assignments again. So for the first time in my life, I reached out to help. Throughout my childhood, I ignored these symptoms. I tried to pretend that this wasn't going on. I was ashamed of it. I'd always been a successful person academically, socially, athletically, and once OCD kind of ravaged my life in all of those areas, I was ashamed to admit that I had a problem. And so when friends and family would notice that clearly there's something going on, you're taking your soccer cleats, it's taking you, an hour and a half to get dressed for soccer practice, I would, make up some excuse for why that was happening, and not admit I had a problem. My mom attempted to take me to a psychologist multiple times throughout my childhood, but I would, lie to the psychologist's face and tell her there was an issue, or I would just run out of the office and go hide in like the parking lot or in the woods or something. So it wasn't until my sophomore year, right on when I was, 19 years old, about to be 20 years old, that I reached out to my mom, who was a school psychologist, for help. And she scheduled an appointment with a psychiatrist friend of hers. That psychiatrist put me on 20 milligrams of Prozac, an antidepressant, and SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, to treat the OCD, and it treated it very effectively. Throughout the rest of my college career, life was much easier than it had ever been. All of a sudden, I was excelling in all areas of life, and I was taking on more extracurricular shit and more social shit. It was smooth sailing. From there, I went off to Phoenix after college graduation, and I've talked about this, but did like an alternative teaching program. I taught at special education in some inner city schools, and that was an incredibly challenging environment and lifestyle, but I handled it. However, during those 3 years teaching in Phoenix, I came off my medication for the first time. I came off the Prozac, and the results were disastrous. All of a sudden, my mind essentially stopped working. I would be paralyzed by indecision. It wasn't as if these compulsions from childhood came back. I didn't feel like I needed to wash my hands over and over, or like a family member was going to die, but it started being like I couldn't register physical reality. I would shut a door, and my brain would not register that door shut, and so I'd have to go shut it over and over and over and over until finally it clicked in my head like the door shut. Same thing with turning off the stove, same thing with locking the car or turning off the water. These registering physical reality would not register in my head. I would stare at a dark room, and my brain would not register that I had turned off the lights in this room. Like this constant voice in my head, even though I'm staring into pitch blackness, my brain is telling me, no, the light is on. It's insane. It's crazy. And then on top of that, these very dark depressive symptoms came about, and I'd never experienced these symptoms before. During my childhood, I wasn't depressed. I would get to places of deep despair because I was overwhelmed by the compulsions. It was all I could think about every second of every day for a decade of my life was these OCD compulsions. But it wasn't just like classical depression, like a sense of hopelessness. It would feel overwhelming and it would feel hopeless because I couldn't control these compulsions. They would take over my life, but it wasn't just like this. I was dwelling in darkness. There would be these bouts. Once I would get done with tying my shoes 100 times, I'd tell myself, that's the last time I'm ever going to do that. That's the last time I'm ever going to do that. So I'd go maybe, an hour thinking that I'm free of OCD. And then the next compulsion would come along. And that would happen every single day for 10 years. This is the last time I'm going to wash my hands 100 times. I get done with it and you get this incredible sense of relief. And then I'm like, I'm done. I'm never going to do an OCD compulsion again. And then, of course, 30 minutes later, something else comes about. And you're taking your shoes on and off over and over again. And so when I came off the medication in 2012, my second year teaching, 2012, my third year teaching, 2012 going into 2013, my third year teaching, these kind of irrational compulsions weren't going on, but it was more that inability to register physical reality, that I had shut a door, that a light was off. My brain would not register it. And then on top of that, now these more traditional depressive symptoms would come along. Feeling, maybe not even traditional depressive symptoms, just feeling of paralysis, like my brain wasn't working, like my brain was an engine, sucked dry of its oil. Or another analogy I always draw is my brain felt like a computer with a virus. Back with old Windows computers, you'd get a virus and hundreds or thousands of screens would pop up, windows would pop up all over your screen, over your desktop, and you'd like close one, just 1,000 more pop up. That's what my brain felt like. It was like I couldn't process reality. It's very strange. And I just didn't like the concept that the only way my brain could function was on a psychiatric medication. But when I would come off the medication, my brain couldn't function. And so I was committed at the time to coming off the medication to convince myself I could function, I could carry on a normal life without the medication. But when I came off the medication, that just wasn't the case. And so I went back on the medication in 2013, and shit was fine again. Shit was smooth sailing. I moved down to Honduras to do nonprofit work, no problem. Once again, even more challenging environment. An incredibly violent country, no power, no running water at times. None of the comforts of the first world whatsoever. Doing, difficult nonprofit work with, students, once again, living in incredibly difficult circumstances. But I was cool. I loved it, actually. A couple years after that, I tried to come off of medication again in 2015. At that time, I was like, okay, I'm just going to make sure my life is as stressless as possible. So I just traveled. I told myself I'm taking at least 6 months off to travel. I'm going to come off the medication. There'll be no stress in my life. Shit will be sweet. Came off the medication. Shit was not sweet. Once again, it wasn't like overwhelming depressive symptoms. This time it was indecision. I would wake up in the morning and I couldn't decide like what I wanted to eat for breakfast. I couldn't decide if I wanted to go for a run or if I wanted to do yoga or if I wanted to do body weight exercises. And I would sit on the edge of my bed. I would wake up and sit on the edge of my bed from 8 a.m. when I woke up to fucking 3 p.m. just like crying and screaming because I could not make a decision about what I wanted to do with my day. Just paralyzed by indecision. And once again, felt as if like just my brain wasn't functioning. I'd have conversations with people and I could carry on conversations with people, but my brain would just be swirling with all of this indecision about what am I going to do after I have this conversation with this individual. So I ended up, cutting that vagabond trip short, coming back to the United States, getting back on the getting back on the medication. I'm skipping some details here, but long story short, getting back on the medication. This time, the psychiatrist I saw put me on double the dosage of what I had initially been on. I had been initially placed on 20 milligrams of Prozac, went off that 20 milligrams. When I got back on it, the second time was back on 20 milligrams. Things were totally cool. When I came off it the third time in 2015, now going into 2016, the psychiatrist I saw put me on 40 milligrams of Prozac. And it resolved the symptoms, but now I was manic. Now I felt invincible. Now I felt as if like there were no consequences to my actions, that I didn't need relationships, that I didn't even need a job, that nothing mattered. I was like automatically happy and chill and kind of numb, regardless of what my life circumstance was. And I did not like that at all. So, from about the summer of 2016 to the summer of 2018, I was on that 40 milligram dosage. And I was just very flippant about life and, just felt kind of numb. Like, it was better than not being on the medication. I didn't feel, it's feeling kind of manic and numb is certainly better than feeling like you want to die. But it wasn't a good way to exist, and I was hurting people actually with my actions and like lack of, I don't know, I felt like I was exuding a lack of like concern or for others in a way, and a lack of I wasn't valuing the relationships around me because I felt like even if I'm all by myself, shit is sweet, I'm numb, everything is fine. So in the summer of 2018, I started gradually reducing the dosage of Prozac. Very slowly, 2.5 milligrams every 3 months, I think was kind of the plan. And so I did that all the way up until March of 2021. So March of this year. So it was a 3-year process reducing the medication. And in March of this year, I came off the medication entirely. And so I've been off the medication since March, and shit has gotten increasingly dark. once again, it's back to the indecision. I can't make decisions about anything. And there is a sense of hopelessness. There's a lack of desire to engage in any activity. There's a lack of desire to get out of the bed any morning. I've found myself in recent weeks going to bed crying and waking up crying. Waking up screaming at times, just like screaming at the top of my lungs, just because I'm not even sure why. Anguish, just like a pain, like a psychological pain. The situation is a bit complicated, however, because of COVID and this quarantine situation. I've essentially been living in social isolation for the past year and a half. Things have started to open up here in LA over the past few months, but still, I moved to LA in the beginning of 2020. COVID hit a few months later. In hindsight, perhaps I should have stopped the reduction of the medication when the world got locked down and there was no social interaction to be had. But I was feeling fine. And quite frankly, March 2020, all of 2020, really, March 2020 through December 2020, living in virtual social isolation with the exception of the little girl that I'm taking care of and her two parents. Virtual social isolation, completely. And I was cool with it. Yeah, I accepted it as like a respite from reality. And it wasn't nice, but I just tried to find the positive in living like a very kind of monastic type of lifestyle. No social relationships, no romantic relationships, but also like less concern about those things. And I just accepted it for what it was. And honestly, it wasn't that bad. I was relatively happy, all things concerned. However, as 2020 turned into 2021 and I've reduced the medication down below 10 milligrams to 7.5 to 5 to 2.5, shit has gotten dark. And so now I am left in a position where I am uncertain of how to proceed. I've told myself that I am going to give it, I've been off the medication since March. I'm told myself I'm going to give it 6 months off the medication, so until about mid-September. And part of the reason I'm waiting so long is that there are other chemical variables at play. Since 2013, when I moved to Honduras, really about 2014, when I was, about 6 months into living down there, I have been smoking weed regularly. And during COVID, from March 2020 up until about a month ago, I was smoking weed virtually every single day. There's been a couple times when I've left LA to go visit family, to go visit a girl that I've been seeing, and during those like kind of 2 week vacations out of LA, I'm not smoking weed. But when I'm back in LA, when I'm back in social isolation, I'm smoking weed virtually every single day. And so the little experiment I'm running on myself right now, which thus far has not been a successful one, is that I just want to clean out the chemical environment in my brain. I want to get rid of the Prozac. I want to get rid of the marijuana. And then caffeine is the other one. Caffeine is one that I'm now starting to reduce. And perhaps I should just abandon it altogether and just try to live an entirely sober lifestyle. But I really want to see what my brain feels like over the next several weeks and perhaps few months without using marijuana as like essentially a numbing agent, because that's what it has been. That is the role it has played throughout COVID. As soon as I'm done working or taking care of the Jojo, the 2.5-year-old I'm taking care of, as soon as I'm done taking care of her, I get high immediately. Because it numbs me out. It makes me like no longer desire social interaction. It makes me no longer desire like putting structures in my life that traditionally make you a happy person. If I just get high, I feel numb. I feel fine. I no longer need to like look for things outside myself to bring happiness. And that's not a healthy way to live. And so I'm attempting to clean out my brain altogether over the next several weeks. If there's no improvement in my psychological state, then I'm going to be forced to go back on the medication. Because when I say this out loud, and I've been having conversations with family and friends over the last several weeks of things have gotten really bad, it sounds kind of ridiculous. And I feel bad even having these conversations with my family and friends, because I've had these exact same conversations with them in the past, and it's fairly obvious what the solution is, right? When I'm on the medication, I feel fine. When I'm off the medication, I feel like I want to kill myself. And because I've been dealing with this issue since I was 10 years old, I've confronted the concept of suicide, and I've stared it right in the face. I've been close, not close. I have, and that's one of the major symptoms right now, is is suicidal ideation. It's living in this state of despair. It gets overwhelming, and it gets to the point where living like this does not seem worth it anymore. And the concept of non-existence seems better, right? The concept of total darkness and nothingness. I don't think if you die, you're going off to be like, if you kill yourself or take your own life, you're going to be burned like in hell for eternity. I don't believe in that concept whatsoever. Perhaps there is some sort of more ethereal, energetic concept that your soul or your energetic being goes off to be part of the universe, or who fucking knows once you die. But I don't think it's like some eternal negativity. I don't believe in that. I don't know what happens. I imagine there's a significant chance that nothing happens, that, the game is over. It's nothingness, it's darkness, it's non-existence, which when you're existing all day, every day in a state of despair, non-existence sounds fucking fantastic. And so I've confronted that throughout my life. There was times when I was a kid where, when I was in middle school and high school, where I would get a knife out of my mom's kitchen and just kind of like put it up to my throat or put it on my heart. I knew I wasn't going to do anything, but I just needed to like push myself to that absolute limit to show myself that like this is what is happening if you continue down this path. This is the worst case scenario. Is this truly what you want? You're thinking about this. Is this truly what you want? Just to push myself to that limit. And this is where I need to let people know I'm not going to hurt myself. I am not a danger to myself. I'm certainly not a danger to others. I think about it. I'm not going to lie. I think about it. But because I have confronted this throughout my life, I have made a decision. I've looked myself in the mirror literally and told myself that's not an option. That's not going to happen. We're riding this thing out. We're not taking ourselves out of this ball game. We're staying on the field. We're playing this game, even if it's an extremely painful game to play. When I came off my medication the second time in 2015, same thing. I would have a razor blade, and I can remember just one instance where I took a razor blade and just kind of rubbed it on my wrist just to push myself to that limit, to show myself this is rock bottom. We are not going lower than this. And in this particular situation, coming off the medication here over the last several months when things have gotten really dark, I'm not going to lie, I have these like exercise straps, these TRX straps that I like suspend from the ceiling or from a point above you. You may have heard of them, and you use them to do, body weight exercises. And I have wrapped those around my neck and just kind of pushed into them and dangled on them a little bit just to get that feeling of what it would feel like to hang yourself, to push yourself to that absolute limit, to just kind of put a floor underneath this psychological downfall, to show myself this is it. This is the bottom. You're thinking about non-existence. You're thinking about taking yourself out of a ball game. Okay, well, this is how it would happen. This is how you would do it, and you're not going to do this. Sounds crazy. I need to reiterate, I'm not going to harm myself. But I engage in these crazy fucking behaviors. And it's showing me that I need to do something. Something has to change. And you would think as I'm saying this out loud, it sounds ridiculous that I'm not just grabbing the medication. I literally have the medication sitting right here next to me. Not like sitting out next to me, but I have it, in the storage bin here here where I live. It's right here. The solution is right here. But I perhaps am obsessed with this concept of cleaning out my brain, seeing what it feels like to be off this medication altogether. And it's, when you look at it objectively, it perhaps is an entirely rational process to engage in because I'm existing in despair. There's a solution that has, been demonstrated for me personally time and time again that it is the solution, and yet I refuse to engage in it. That being said, I am saying out loud, if there is no significant improvement by mid-September, I will get back on the medication. So, and that's why I can say, as I began this episode, that I'm confident I'm going to come out of this stronger. Either, I don't want to say miraculously, either like existing without Prozac, without marijuana, and potentially without caffeine, perhaps that perhaps through that suffering and perhaps through that, I'm hoping to obtain some sort of clarity of mind that allows me to kind of transcend the suffering I'm in. We'll see if that can happen or not. But if it doesn't, if there is no significant improvement, then I will get back on the medication, and then I will have the perspective of what it feels like to live in despair, which I know will propel me, to be a better person in the future. So yeah, that's where we are now. I feel like I haven't quite described exactly the symptoms that I'm experiencing now. It's very it's hard to pinpoint. It's a sense of fear. It's a sense of loneliness and a sense of fear. When I wake up in the morning, I don't want to live life. I don't know what to do. I literally don't know what to do with my day. I've started to, every night plan out like hour by hour exactly what my day is going to look like, because otherwise if I wake up in the morning without like a very concrete delineated plan, I literally don't know what to do. And there's just a lack of desire to engage in any activities. I have no desire to I do want to be around people, which is another reason why I haven't hopped right back on the medication, because when I am around other human beings, I feel pretty normal. As LA has opened up here a little bit over the last few months, I'm making a concerted effort to hang out with the few people that I do know. It's very bizarre to have lived in the city for 18 months and essentially not have any friends, because basically as soon as I moved here, LA shut down. So the opportunity to hang out with people hasn't really been there. But when I have hung out with people, even when I talk to people on the phone, I feel relatively normal. I certainly feel much better than when I'm not around people. But that being said, like, I don't have any sort of aspiration. I don't know, like, I don't want to be a career, I'm not a career nanny. This is coming out here was one, a dad internship, because I want to have kids at one point and I want to be very ready to have those kids. I wasn't raised by a father. I feel like I have good fatherly skills. I've been a teacher for much of my life, and I think I've been a very effective one at that. But, I've never actually taken care of a child. I really wanted that experience, so when I do become a father, I can do so, like I can hit the ground running and be very confident in those skills. Secondly, I've always wanted to live in LA, and like the compensation to effort ratio in this job is very nice. As far as jobs go, this is a great gig. I don't know where I was going with that. This is another symptom of the OCD. So I apologize if this is kind of, if my train of thought kind of loses. This is another symptom that I've been experiencing since I've been off the medication, is I just kind of like lose what I'm talking about. I was saying I don't want to be a career nanny, but I don't have any aspirations really to do anything else. I want to travel. Although now, even when I think about traveling, which is always like my utmost desire, it scares me. Packing my bag and vagabonding throughout Latin America and the third world has never scared me before. But now when I think about it, it kind of scares me. Everything just kind of scares me a little bit, which is not how I typically am whatsoever. So it's the indecision. It's a lack of desire to really engage in any activity except I just want to be around people. Just kind of like this fear of the next moment, this like constant fear of the next moment. And then the indecision. Once again, like I'll go to the grocery store and I will just stop. I will just be paralyzed because I can't make a choice about what to be put in put in the cart. That's one of the major symptoms. It's the indecision, the fear, and then a lack of like I woke up this morning and actually put it very clearly, talking to myself out loud. I woke up this morning and told myself that like I wake up and I feel like I don't know where I am or what I am doing here. It's like I wake up and I'm like an alien in a foreign environment every single day. It's bizarre. So shit has been bad. Shit has been very bad. I won't say exactly specifically what it was I was trying to make a decision about earlier this week, but I couldn't make a decision about a particular relationship I have with someone. I couldn't make a decision about something I wanted to do with that relationship. And I was just overwhelmed by the indecision, and I just woke up, like I think I mentioned this a little bit ago, but I just woke up screaming at the top of my lungs. The other day, my computer stopped charging, and it's like I took it into the Apple store, and they told me I might need to replace my computer or like replace the battery or something. And so I sent it to them, and on the drive home, same thing. The drive home for 10 minutes, I am screaming at the top of my lungs. Just screaming because that was like something I didn't expect, something that like is a negative thing, and it just throws me off the deep end. I'm talking about like screaming to the point like my throat is in pain and I feel like maybe I'm like about to rupture my eardrum. It's crazy. And I don't know how I sound right now, but I think one of the issues with this, as far as like friends and family are talking to friends and family about it, and then in particular the psychologist I've started to see recently, is that I think I sound like relatively normal or like confident, perhaps. I know my psychologist, like I got off the phone with him, and actually he just started asking me questions about my life and my experiences, and he was like very interested in those things. And towards the end of the conversation, he's like, "Wow, Alex, you sound like a real interesting dude. Like I'd love to actually, meet you at some point." It was on the phone. It was supposed to be like a 50-minute session. We ended up talking for like 2 hours, but it was just like him asking me questions about my life. He's from Central America. Obviously, I've lived and traveled throughout Central America. So he just asked me questions about my travel. It was just like two bros catching up. We were on like a first date is what it really turned into. And I was thoroughly enjoying it. It made me feel much better to communicate with him. But as we got off the phone, he's like, all right, man. He's like, I'd love to like meet you at some point. He's like a very interesting dude. I've never had a patient, quite like you before. He's like, what do you say? Like, we catch up in a couple weeks. And so clearly I had given him the impression that like shit is sweet. Like I'm just talking to you for fun. But no, I feel like I need to talk to someone every day. So I was like, no, man, we can't talk in a couple weeks. Like maximum one more week I can wait. I can go without talking to you. Honestly, I feel like I need to talk to you every day. So yeah, that is where we are right now. And I apologize because this podcast is like, I said, like, there's very few things I like want to do or like aspirations I have or goals I have right now. But this podcast has been one of them for years. I started my first podcast with my buddy Sam in Honduras in 2013. And for, a myriad of reasons, I think marijuana being one of them, I think marijuana kind of really does, at least for me, like reduce my ambition. And kind of like this is the downside, I think, kind of Prozac. I think it does kind of put a floor underneath your psychological state. So it kind of automatically makes you feel happy, even though maybe you don't have the structures in your life that should truly make you happy. I think if you're experiencing depression, like you should really make an effort, or any kind of, let's just stick with depression. You should really make an effort to put structures in your life that are emblematic of a healthy lifestyle, diet, a quality diet, regular exercise, a solid social network around you. Beyond that, perhaps even like, a stable romantic partner, a good relationship with your family, a stable job. Like I have philosophical misgivings about psychiatric medication. I really think people should make a concerted effort to build a happy life around themselves to the greatest extent possible before they automatically hop back onto a pill. And so that's why I'm really hesitant to just go back to the pill, because those things, there are major pieces of my life missing. Perhaps really the only area of my life that I have my shit together is my physical fitness. I have a clean diet and I exercise regularly. But during COVID, I certainly don't have a social life. I'm in the middle of hopefully rebuilding a stable romantic partnership with someone who I love very dearly and who, we have been on and off for several years. And, in large part due to my own psychological instability at times, or, whatever it may be, I have not been the best partner. I think we can both do a better job of being partners. So I'm hoping we're in the process of rebuilding that relationship. But also like I said, I like this job that I have, but I know it's not like, it doesn't like fulfill me. I know it's not like I'm, advancing myself in any way. I guess I am. Like, I feel confident in but I do feel like I've kind of accomplished what I want to accomplish with this job. Like, I feel confident that if and when I do have kids, that I will be a great father. But I know, like, there is a next professional step. It would be nice to know what it is, like, long term I would like to do professionally. My point is, there's certainly areas in my life that I could improve. Unfortunately, COVID kind of limits some of those, but also, like, if I left, if I wasn't in this job, there perhaps would be more flexibility in my ability to put some of those structures in place. So it's a little tricky. But I think based on my conversations with the vast majority of people I've talked to about this, it seems, their response is like, dude, what the fuck are you doing to yourself? This is now the third time you've attempted to do this. And, every time you've attempted to do this, it hasn't gone well. And when you're on the medication, you feel perfectly fine. Not to mention the problem to begin with, the decade of childhood where you were living in despair. And then when you got on the medication, that despair went away. Like, why the fuck are you doing this to yourself? And I understand that. But I am pretty committed to keeping this going at least for about the next 6 weeks. So yeah, I will be providing updates on how that is. And I'm hoping that in some way, this isn't just, my goal is not just for this to be like some sort of narcissistic rambling about my own life. And I'm hoping there's value for this for other people. And I don't know what that value is. I'm not like offering advice, take what you want from it. For some people, this may be, obviously you should be on your medication. For other people, it may be, inspiring to make the attempt to be off the medication. Although I don't know what kind of inspiration that would be. It's not going well for me thus far. So yeah, I will be providing updates on that. And then more than anything, like, this is what I want the podcast to be. I'm going to be candid about who I am. So for the next few episodes, I have 3 episodes recorded that were very similar to how the podcast was built, right? Me interviewing my closest family and friends. And so the next 3 episodes will be that. Beyond those 3 episodes, however, I'm not exactly sure. The podcast may take a little bit of a different turn, depending how my psychological state develops, or, how things kind of shake out here over the next month or so. I may not. I may record. My goal was, when I moved out to LA, I wanted to go to LA, a city where there's all kind of creative and interesting people. And, my goal was to, make a bunch of friends out here, meet a bunch of new people, and the most interesting among them, in my opinion, I wanted to interview those people, but that obviously hasn't happened at all. And so, in large part, that's the part of the reason why the podcast has not been consistent, or why it's been totally absent over the past 8 months, is because I haven't been around human beings to interview. And then on top of that, I've just been feeling fucking shitty, man. It's just a slog to get out of bed in the morning. It takes every ounce of effort and energy I have just to get through the day. And so I've just not been, I don't want to say I'm unable. I could have, done something with the podcast, but certainly the inspiration wasn't there. I'll put it that way. So yeah, I think that's it. I still feel like a little lacking on describing exactly the symptoms I'm experiencing, but suffice it to say that, It hasn't been good. It hasn't been good. Just to recap the symptoms, it's like I'm unable to register physical reality. The big one is like shutting my fridge. When I go to shut the fridge, my brain will not register that the fridge is shut. I have to shut it over and over and over again in order for my brain to register that shut. Locking the car, same way. When I leave the car, my brain will not register that the car door is shut. My brain will not I have to shut the car door, lock the car door over and over. Dude, fucking reading again. All of a sudden, I'm back in fucking 7th grade, not able to get past the fucking title page. I can't read right now, man. I have to reread chapters or go back, not reread chapters, or reread pages, reread paragraphs, go back to the previous page over and over. It's taking me like, sometimes 30 minutes to get through a page. That is kind of like the more not tangible, but more demonstrable stuff in a way. And then on top of that, I'm repeating myself here, but indecision about what to do with my day, indecision about what to eat what to get at the grocery store, indecision about what, especially during the weekends, man. The weekends is nothing but open time and space. For me, the weekends are terrifying because I don't know anyone out here. So Saturday rolls around. I don't have any obligations as far as taking care of JoJo is concerned, and I literally do not want to know what to do with my time. And it's just time and space and myself, and it's fucking overwhelmingly terrifying. It's like scary. I'm like scared of the weekends. So the indecision, and then the lack of aspiration, lack of desire to really do much. Like I even, I don't like, not too much excites me right now. And then like the combination of all of those factors throughout the day, at times I'll just collapse into like a ball of tears, and at times like screaming tears. So you've got the inability to register physical reality. If I've turned the lights off, if I've shut the door, those sorts of things. And on top of that, more of kind of these depressive symptoms. So it's like this combination of like the remnants of what used to be OCD, and then on top of that, more depressive shit. And it's overwhelming right now. But just talking about this and expressing this, I can already feel is helpful. Yeah. It's not going to break me. It's not going to defeat me. It's extremely fucking shitty right now. Don't get me wrong. It's extremely fucking shitty right now. It's bad. Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, it's driving me to the point of like simulating suicide. It's fucking insane. And it's even more insane than I know what a potential guaranteed solution is. But I'm obsessed with pushing this experiment to the limit. But not to be concerned, it's not going to ruin me or end me. It just may force me to be a very unstable and unhappy person over the next several weeks. And if that's the case, that's the case. It's my decision I'm doing to myself. So I apologize for those who care about me to hear this kind of shit. But I'm doing what I think I have to do for myself. Because the thing is, once you get back on the medication, man, it's not like you can just get back on it and it's solved and you can get back off it. No, it's like once you're on it for at least a year. It takes about a month, maybe a little more, to build up in your system, to feel the effects. And then from there, you really need to stay on it. You don't want to feel better again and get off it. And that's the worst thing you can do. So what's really kind of daunting to me is that if I do get back on the medication, I know I'm on it, maybe not for good, but although I think a lot of people that care about me would like me to be on it for good, but I know I'm on it for an extended period of time, at least a year. And to me is like, I guess it would be disappointing. I mean, it'd be great to feel better. That certainly wouldn't be disappointing, but it would be disappointing that I've not dedicated like 3 years. This is my sole, effort I've been dedicating my time to, but it's taken me 3 years to get off this medication. And for 2.5 of those years, things were going perfectly fine. Going from 40 milligrams basically down to 10 milligrams of Prozac, I was fine, totally fine. And actually better. Like where I was at 40 milligrams, where I was at 10 milligrams, I actually felt better on 10 milligrams than I did at 40 milligrams. Because I felt like I was actually feeling emotions. I felt more sensitive. I felt like I valued the people I love, the relationships of the people I love more. I felt like there was more of an impetus for me to, engage in passion projects like this podcast, more of an impetus for me to explore other areas of life. When I was on the really high dosage of Prozac, I just felt fucking numb and like nothing mattered. I didn't, it was better than feeling depressed. It was better than feeling depressed or overwhelmed by OCD symptoms, but it also felt like you're kind of just you're on a drug. I don't like that feeling at all. So coming down, there was no problem. It was just this kind of last half of coming off the medication, or this last kind of maybe eighth of time period of coming off this medication where shit has really hit the fan. And I need to wrap up here because now I can feel myself rambling. But the social factor is a big one too, because like I say, when I'm around people, I feel relatively normal. But with COVID, it doesn't seem like, even with this vaccine, that there's necessarily an end in sight here. And I actually called up my buddy Stephen Morgan, the last podcast I recorded the other day, just to get his kind of perspective on the situation. And I had thought of this already, but just kind of talking to him really kind of spit it to me more clearly. The world we live in is a fucking nutty world, like even without COVID. I don't think our biology and who we are as like biological creatures, it wasn't designed for the world we live in. It wasn't designed to live in concrete jungles, to be packed into cities of tens of millions of people with Wi-Fi and cell phone and radio signals blasting through the air, with constant exposure to information and staring at screens and all kinds of lights and sounds. Like, we are exposed to so much shit. In some ways, that's fucking amazing. Like, we have all the information, all of the history of the world's information at the palm of our hands at all times, which is incredible. But at the same time, like, are our brains really designed to handle that shit? Is that, a source of a lot of this mental instability? And so perhaps, these psychiatric drugs are these, not panaceas, but perhaps they are these tools that can help us be our highest selves in this incredibly crazy world we live in. And don't get me wrong, it's not as if I wish I was born fucking, 200 years ago where, people are, dying at age 30 from like scurvy or whatever. Women are dying in childbirth on, a regular basis. I'm not saying that. I feel incredibly fortunate to be born into the era I live in, but I do wonder how much of, this crazy new technological, insane world that we live in is having a negative effect on all of our psyches, and obviously some more than others. And so perhaps I should be more gentle with myself, or perhaps all of us should be more gentle with ourselves. And if we do have a tool that can help us be our highest selves, help us be a happier selves, perhaps we shouldn't question that and we should do it. But obviously there's a very clear counter argument for that as well. So I'm not going to let myself exist in despair forever. I mean, dude, we're going on, over a year here in isolation. Let's say if you live, not best case scenario, but 100 years would be a nice, generous life to live. That's 1% of your life right there. And certainly far more than 1% of my life I have lived in despair. I would calculate that, probably over 50% of my life I have lived in psychological despair. And that's not good. But anyway, just saying this, and I'm about to end this now, I do feel optimistic about the future, ironically enough. And yeah, I do feel optimistic, and I am committed to keeping this podcast going. I can't promise that the podcast is going to be consistent every week. I can't promise. I want it to be. That is my goal, for it to be consistent every single week, and perhaps beyond that, more than once a week. But I can promise that I'm going to make a concerted effort to keep this thing going. And I'm always going to be transparent and honest about where I am in life when I am on this microphone. So there will be more episodes coming. I can't promise exactly when and where they're going to come, but they will be coming. I'm not giving up on myself, certainly, and I'm not giving up on this project. So I look forward to more of these in the future. And thank you so much for listening to this. I can't tell you how much it means. The downloads are more than I would anticipate them being when, in the first, let's say the first chapter of the podcast, the first 30 or so episodes I put up, the downloads are always way more than that I anticipate them being. So thank you for that to everyone. I love you all. I love everyone. I love humanity. I do really love being alive in a lot of ways, and I will start crying here. I do love being alive, and I want to be alive. And I want to, give my best effort on this earth for the time we have on this crazy spinning ball that's flying around the giant nuclear explosion in the sky. I want to be a part of it, and I want to be my best self during this experience. So I apologize to everyone I know and everyone that I don't know that I haven't been my best self. And I know some of those things are out of my control, but some of those things are in my control, and I could have done a much better job. And I'm going to do a much better job being the best person I can be. And so I look forward to keeping you all updated on that journey. All right, I love you all, and I'll talk to you soon.